get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Hey, Thrive Out listeners, Lou Diamond here. Today we're pulling an episode from Bedside Reading's Authors That Thrive, my interview with Jeanne Blasberg, novelist, travel writer, and adventurer. She's awesome. You're going to hear more about her book, about Eden and the Nine. So sit back and relax and enjoy this Bedside Reading Authors That Thrive episode of Jeanne Blasberg here on Thrive Loud.
Welcome to Bedside Reading's Authors That Thrive, a podcast show that provides you exclusive access to top writers around the globe and how they are thriving through their writing, their passions, and their lives. Here's your host, Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to Bedside Reading's Authors That Thrive, connecting you to amazing authors that are thriving through their work and in their lives each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today, we have an award-winning, best-selling author of Eden and the Nine. She has won the Beverly Hills Book Awards for women's fiction and has been a finalist for both the Benjamin Franklin Award for Best New Voice in Fiction and the Sarton Women's Book Award for historical fiction. She is the founder of the Westerly Memoir Project, as well as a board member of the Boston Book Festival. She is a student and board member of Grub Street, one of the country's preeminent creative writing centers, where she wrote and revised The Nine and is currently developing the next novel. Bedside Reading Authors That Thrive listeners, please welcome Jeanne Blasberg. Jeanne, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thanks, Lou. Great to be here.
Jeanne is coming to us from New England in a room that looks like it requires a lot of energy to heat.
You got it. I'm actually on Beacon Hill and was pretty psyched to see Little Women this weekend and get inspired by Louisa May Alcott, who lived only at one point in her life just a block from this room. So kind of if you picture the room that she had her one of those dance scenes in, I'm that era of a heating system.
A 200-year-old house, as you shared with me, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So writing is one thing, winning awards is another, and repeating award-winning books is also a challenge. Let's talk about this most recent project of yours, The Nine. A little bit back after coming off your first novel and then having to come up with something else. What was that challenge like as a writer for you?
Well, the challenge really wasn't having to come up with the idea because the ideas were happening concurrently. I actually started The Nine as I was finishing Eden. I was, it was kind of a writer's procrastination tool is to start on another project that you start to get very excited about.
Right.
So I had these two things going in a parallel path and then decided I really got to finish Eden and get it out there. But the challenge came when I got a following with Eden, a certain type of following, and The Nine was not drastically, the writing style is the same, but the subject matter and the theme and I think the type of book it is quite different. So I had some pushback from my agent and people who are looking out for my career, quote unquote, with their concerns that it was, a departure. And I guess I kind of had to make an artistic leap of faith that I didn't really care about being pigeonholed as historical fiction or women's fiction, that this literary thriller was also something I was really excited about writing, and that I'd be expanding my readership and not worried about so much alienating anyone who was an absolute lover of Eden. So that's where the leap of faith came in. And the most difficult decision was to just keep going forward with a second book I really believed in, although it was different.
Jeanne, I love asking questions of writers this because I am curious. Your writing process, is it you're doing it in a very regimented, you have a game plan ahead of time, or it's when the creativity hits you?
I have a regimented discipline of sitting down and working every day, but I definitely would say that the production comes in fits and spurts. Some days I'm going through the motions and I turn to research, or I turn to maybe writing an essay that I want to publish. And then I'll even get ideas when I'm, in the shower or in the middle of the night, and I'll write them down on my phone. And just like I tend to come up with connections and ideas that I think are the best when I'm not at my computer, but then I get really excited to sit down. I have a practice between like 9 and 1 every day of writing. And yeah, so the practice is very disciplined, but the actually like the real golden nuggets that make their way into the books, those don't just stream out with consistency. They definitely come at any point at any time of day, or when you least expect it.
Is it in the middle of the night type of thing? You wake up and go, yeah, I've got the next thing.
Well, yeah, like last night, 2 a.m., I had to go and then turn on a light and write something down because I was like, oh, that's a good one. I'm actually not going to flip over and try to go back to sleep. I've got to write that down. So I do have bits of insomnia, but I'd say I actually get a lot of ideas when I'm walking or swimming or just moving, doing something where I'm not thinking too much. I get kind of imagery in my mind, and then the next writing session, it's easy to kind of capture that imagery or to try to start capturing what I saw.
This has not been your entire life's work, writing. It kind of came a little later in the game. What kicked it off for you?
I've always been a reader, and I've always wanted to be a writer. Oh. I've written, but I have not shared it or not thought about being published. And I guess, I had a career in finance. I wrote cases and articles for the Harvard Business Review. I was a research associate at the Harvard Business School. That writing life, although very academic and business oriented, kind of turned me on to the hours you could keep, and that it was a flexible gig if you also had a lot of family commitments. And so I think what kicked it off was the youngest left home, and I had a lot of space in my mind that had been taken up by other people. I had a lot of bandwidth for thinking about myself and my own goals, and I decided that I was going to go for it. I had time for classes and finding mentors. I had time to take classes in the evenings and get a lot of good feedback, and time to dig in and think about, do some really deep thinking and deep work and not constantly be interrupted. So I guess that was, although I was prepared to kind of launch once that moment hit. That's when I really started taking myself and my writing seriously, that I wanted to publish these books.
Jeannie, these creative writing centers that you're affiliated with, Grub Street, talk about the environment and what it means to you. Is it a place for you where ideas get fostered, or is it just a great way to bring colleagues together for you?
For me, luckily, I've found that it's both. It's one of these places where you get what you put in. And if you spend a lot of time there, you're obviously going to make friends. And luckily, the friends you make among the teachers and the staff, those are people who've been in the book business, the writing business, the publishing business for a long time. So they are just natural mentors once you spend time and become part of the community. But the classroom is an amazingly safe and supportive environment to workshop chapters. So just imagine having the opportunity to go to class once a week, and maybe you're taking a 10-week class, and 4 of those sessions, you get to spend time reading 5 to 10 pages of your work and getting immediate reactions from people you trust. And the reactions can help you figure out what's really working and which way to go and spend more time, and actually find out what's really not working or what might even be offensive. And you're like, oh shit, I'm not going there, So it's really helped me. It's just like doing a focus group with a product. Sometimes you're surprised what people really think is great, and you're like, okay, I think that's kind of great too. I think if you do, I'm going to keep going in that direction. So it's been like a laboratory.
Yeah.
And it's been a place where I can ask advice of people who are way more experienced than me. And then it's also been a place where conferences are held. So you actually get introductions to people in the business. Folks come up from New York and all different cities for our annual Muse in the Marketplace, where we have like the best of the business meets the craft side. And it's that has been an incredible experience. That's where I met my agent and really got like the nudge that my projects could have legs. So yeah, it's been incredible. And then the Westerly Memoir Project, which I founded about 5 years ago, is in a small town in southern Rhode Island. I wanted to bring the amazing teaching of a place like Grub Street, or that experience of instruction and kind of guidance in expressing yourself. I wanted to bring that to this small town where I have a connection and where we spend summers. And so that's been a great thing. We've taught memoir. I've taught some short fiction classes, and we're looking forward to going into our 6th season in the spring.
Great.
Yeah.
Jeannie, as it relates to your creativity, I guess I want to know maybe what was the big inspiration for the 9 for you?
Oh, for the 9. Well, this is a story of a mother and a son and this rocky high school career. So I would be lying if I didn't say the inspiration wasn't slightly from personal experience. But stepping back, it's not just me. I think we're a generation of parents who've had a particularly weird experience. It's where the expectation is to be fairly involved with your kids, but then you're highly criticized for being too involved with your kids, and you turn your kids over to a world that you can't entirely trust in terms of some of these schools. So it's kind of picked up on the vibe of what's gone on with school scandals, and then also what's gone with these parental and college admission scandals. It's like there's just something weird in the water, I think, in the age that I raised my kids. And being someone who stayed home with their kids, the tendency is to kind of treat it maybe like a job and not just like a relationship. And so I wanted to, be fully honest with like how damaging that can be. So I felt like I had a story to tell. I've kind of told a gripping, suspenseful tale, but it's really a cautionary tale, and I hope parents of adolescents and younger kids read it and see, like, wow, what it's all about is really just people like living together and loving each other. It's not, whether you have an Ivy League sticker on the back of your station wagon at the end of the day. Like we've gotten totally wrapped around the wrong things as a society, and our kids are growing up in a completely different time than we grew up in. And so it's a book that I think has a higher purpose in parenting and in terms of parent-child relationships. But I also feel like the campus novel in these boarding schools are kind of amazing and offer great opportunities, but they're also kind of mysterious and strange in their traditions, and kind of there's an underworld, kind of like a Harry Potter-ish underworld. And as a product of total public school education, and my kids went to these boarding schools, I was like, oh my gosh, you could just, if you took a little imagination, a little Harry Potter-ish realism, but take what's actually there and what's happened in the news and all these scandals and this cover-up and blah, 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 you could create a great setting for a thriller. And so I wanted to mix that with some a novel of our times, a campus novel of our times that's has a very strong parental voice in it. So I like it. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's a lot of fun. It's touched the nerve that I wanted it to touch, and gotten the reaction from reviewers and readers. That's really gratifying, because I think I've connected with a lot of people on it.
I think there's a fine line between being helicopter parents, and I think we all kind of want to be hoverboard parents, not too far off the ground, but enough to have like a little bit of oversight in a very difficult age. You're right.
We're so imperfect. We're so imperfect. And I have the most imperfect character is my main character, the mom in this book. And I think a lot of people find her really like cringeworthy to read her. But then when I meet with book clubs and readers, they must admit that we all have a little bit of Hannah Weber in us. And that's what makes it so uncomfortable is that it's identifiable. You know, some of her reaction is identifiable, but she definitely goes over the top.
Jeanne, I love asking guests on this program this question. When you're having a not so great day and you're having trouble thriving, what practice do you seek or individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
Wow, that's a great question. I guess I go back to my background also as an athlete. When I'm not having such a great day writing-wise, creativity-wise, or even emotionally, I guess my source of solace is to put the dog on the leash and go for a walk or get my body moving in some way. I definitely feel a release of tension when I get outside in the sun or feel the fresh air. And luckily, that is a good source of relief for me. I'm also a competitive squash player. So getting a squash game and like hitting the ball as hard as I can has always been my biggest release. My husband and I play a lot of squash together, and I credit hitting the ball as the reason we've been married happily for 30 years.
That's great.
Yeah. I sometimes just take it all out on one single little ball hitting it against the wall. And I'm lucky that I have that release.
I like it. Jeanne, is there one author, speaker, or creator that you admired most?
Oh, great question. Gosh. I should have been prepared with an answer for a question like this, but I guess I am a big fan of Barbara Kingsolver.
Okay.
Just in terms of fiction and her novel, The Poisonwood Bible, I think that read for me was transformational. I think I drew from it when I was writing Eden, all the voices, all the experience, and kind of a biblical metaphor or like a faith-based metaphor. But I'm reading all the time. And so I have current novelists and even debut novelists who have kind of rocked my world recently. And I'm constantly trying to just have good sentences in my head before I go to bed and great writing in my pocket.
Jeanne, one big takeaway you want readers and our listeners to take from you, from both of your books, about your message. Is there one key big takeaway as you produce this great content that you want the readers to take home with them?
Oh, so a message from my novels would be that we're all born into certain situations, and stories can get heaped onto us based on the life we've been born into. But we have the chance to write our own stories and be our own people. And so not to be pigeonholed or labeled or take on the story you were born with, but create the life that you want.
Jeanne Blasberg, this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Thanks, Lou. It's been a pleasure, too, for me.
And to our listeners out there, keep thriving onward and upward. And thank you for joining us on Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive.
Thank you for listening to Authors That Thrive, brought to you by Bedside Reading. To learn more about today's guest, head on over to bedsidereading.com. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or follow us everywhere on social media at Bedside Reading.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and check us out on the web at thriveloud.com, or follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud.